Here we go again. This time, part 3 is about the female reproductive system. Again, it's just about the organs and what they do and how they function. The female reproductive organs consist of ovaries, the uterine tubes, the uterus, the vagina, external genitalia, and the mammary glands. And the internal reproductive organs of the female are located within the pelvis, usually in the center part of the pelvis and the lower part of the abdomen, between the urinary bladder and the rectum. The internal reproductive organs are held in place by ligaments. You got the broad ligament spreads out on both sides of the uterus and attaches to the ovaries and the uterine tubes. This broad ligament often stretches when a woman's had multiple births and the babies were large. So sometimes this broad ligament stretches and interferes with functioning everyday activities. So they have to have it repaired, surgically repaired. This is another image of the reproductive system. You can see the fallopian tubes, the uterus, the broad ligaments, the vagina, opening to the cervix. You have ovaries, and they're the female reproductive organ, the basic one, and they do eggs and sex hormones. They have one on each side of the uterus. The ovarian ligaments anchor the ovaries to the uterus. The suprasensory ligaments anchor the ovaries to the pelvic, and the mesovariums attach the ovaries to the broad ligaments. So just kind of get an idea of that there's ligaments that attach to everything. The organs are the ovarian follicle. These are a group of cells in the ovaries that contain the eggs. Each ovarian follicle contains an oocyte, which is an egg. And you have a picture of it. And oogenesis is the process of the gamete production in females. So it's production of the egg. Oogenesis begins before a female is born. By the 4th month of development, the ovaries contain 5 million eggs, which are the cells from which oocytes develop. Females are born with all of their oogenia, 2 million, unlike males that can only begin to produce a sperm during puberty. So basically, women can get pregnant anytime, but not usually until they start their menses. Oogenesis and fertilization. At puberty, about 300,000 to 400,000 oogenia are left. Puberty to menopause, you have the FSH stimulates several follicles to begin developing during each menstrual cycle, but only one follicle should be ovulated. But, there are such things as twins, too. Oocytes are swept into one of the uterine tubes by the fimbria, which is there's kind of like the tails in the males. These are just kind of things that move things along. If the sperm is present in the uterine tube during ovulation, they could be fertilized. If fertilization occurs, then zygote implants in the uterus, which means the egg implants in the uterus. Oocytes only live for 24 hours. If no sperm is present at the ovulation, no zygote develops and the egg dies. And another process starts. Uterine fallopian tubes, part of the uterus which extends towards the ovaries and receive the oocytes. And the fimbria are the fringe-like structures around the opening that sweep the oocyte into the uterine tubes. Fertilization usually occurs in the part of the uterine tube near the ovary called the ampulla. And tubal ligations when these tubes get tied, and basically the female cannot, no eggs go out and no sperm come in. The uterus is pear-shaped. It functions, receives, retains, and provides nourishment for the egg, and where embryo resides and develops. It's the main part, has a fundus, which is the top part of it, and the bottom of it is called the cervix, and it leads to the vagina, which is an opening. And the uterine wall has the perimetrium, myometrium, which is the muscle, and the endometrium, which is the menstruation where the cells are sloughed off. And this happens during menstruation, and it often, not often, but sometimes it gets infected and needs to be treated. And if not treated, then usually the female is not able to get pregnant. It causes a lot of damage. But they can now repair a lot of the damage with better techniques and better kind of, I'm going to say, scraping. They do a dilatation curettage, a DNC, to get rid of the endometrium, and in the process save stuff. The vagina extends from the uterus to the outside of the body. Female copulation organ that receives the penis during the intercourse, allows menstrual flow, involved in childbirth, contains very muscular walls and a mucous membrane, and it's very acidic to keep the bacteria out. The vulva is external sex organs, and it contains the mons pubis, the labia majora, minora, and the clitoris, and the prepuce, and the vestibule. And the mons pubis is the outside covering, and the pubis symphysis, kind of a fatty layer. And the labia majora is on the outside fold, and it's the entrance to the vagina, and it's equivalent to the male scrotum. Labia minora is the thin inner folds, entrance to the vagina. Then there is the clitoris. It's a small erectile structure, equivalent to the male penis. Precipice is two labia minora unite over the clitoris, provides protection. And the vestibule, space in which the vagina and the urethra are located. And also, when you look at the anatomy of the vagina is lower than the meatus, urinary meatus. So the first hole that you see is the urinary meatus, then there's the vagina, and then a little bit further apart is the rectum. So you can see that in this picture. It doesn't show. The urinary just shows the vagina. Mammary glands are strictly for milk production in the breast. They modified sweat glands. Female breasts begin to enlarge during puberty, and they have lobes of adipose tissue, and these lobes and ducts and the lobules alter during lactation to expel milk, and that helps with the when the baby starts sucking, kind of lets the milk come down. And here's another picture of it. Female puberty begins 11 to 13 years of age and completed by 16. Menarche, first episode of menstrual bleeding. And what happens now is the vagina, uterus, and uterine tubes, external genitalia enlarge, and the fat is deposited in the breast and the hips. And you have elevated estrogen, progesterones are secreted by the ovaries. You got your female sex hormones. They're the same as the males. And the gonadotropin releasing is in the hypothalamus, and the LH and the FSH are in the anterior pituitary, and cause ovulation, and the other one begins development. So anterior pituitary, got to remember that. Estrogen is proliferation of the endometrial cells, development of mammary glands, control of LH, luteinizing hormone, and the follicle-stimulating hormone secretion, and all your secondary sex characteristics such as breasts. Progesterone is enlargement of endometrial cells and secretion of fluid from the uterine glands. It maintains your pregnancy state, development of mammary glands, especially the alveoli. Now, these are mammary glands in alveoli, but they're not in the lung. They're in the mammary gland. They control estrogen, FSH, and LH, and also develop secondary sex characteristics. Your menstrual cycle is your bleeding, and which occurs about every 28 days, and a series of changes that occur in sexually mature, non-pregnant females. And this is when the endometrium is shed from the uterus. And you bleed about 3 to 5 days. Some women are shorter, but it happens about every 28 days. Stages, days 1 to 5 is the shedding, and that's when you bleed, and your estrogen and progesterone levels are low, and your follicles begin to mature. Days 6 to 13, everything grows, proliferates, and endometrium rebuilds, estrogen levels begins to increase, and progesterone levels remain low, and your follicle matures. And then day 14 is the ovulation. It's when you're more likely to be able to you secrete, and it's released due to the luteinizing hormone. Estrogen levels remain high. Progesterone levels are increasing. Cervical mucus kind of thins out. Corpus luteum, mature follicles after ovulation, degenerates if the egg is not fertilized. So it just washes out, basically. And then 15 to 28 days is endometrium is preparing for implantation. Estrogen levels decrease, progesterone levels high, cervical mucus thickens. So we start all over again. Here's your cycle. Menopause, you secrete less hormones, and less follicles in the ovaries are low. Your menstrual cycle cycle and ovulation are less regular, but you have hot flashes, fatigue, irritability may occur, and estrogen replacement therapy used to decrease side effects. You have your sexual behavior, testosterone, and it's much like it as it is in the male. You have psychological factors. The sensory and motor neurons involved controlling female sexual responses are similar to those found in the male, but a lot of times women maybe have a headache or feeling really tired, and their libido is not as active as most males are. During sexual excitement, erectile dysfunction tissue with the clitoris around the vaginal opening comes engorged with blood, and your mucus glands secrete a small amount of mucus, and stimulation of female genitals during sexual intercourse could trigger an orgasm or climax. The vaginal and smooth muscle, as well as the surrounding skeletal muscles, contract rhythmically, and after the sex act, everything relaxes with an overall sense of satisfaction. Contraception, there's many kinds of methods, either by preventing fertilization, 6 types, and